Maybe it's good to start sort of in time and keep in this flow of the lovely weather. I'm very happy to present Tiantisn in my German pronunciation, which is probably quite non-Chinese. Nevertheless, with big pleasure, as we're looking forward to learn from a Chinese perspective, to gain a view on architecture from a Chinese perspective, especially looking at rural conditions and how to work in the context of something that could be called a village. I'm also curious what the village is, because I think there's quite a diverse set of concepts connected to the same word.
It's very different from Germany.
I guess so, yeah. I think it's especially interesting as the countryside is now facing a new condition, or us as society is facing with digitalization a new condition of development that people like Dirk Becker refer to as the next society. So in a way, we're in the middle of a much more dramatic change of our living conditions than what might have happened with industrialization. So again, society is turned upside down and things are being renegotiated, re-evaluated, and between all of us, a conversation is going on how we want to shape our future together. And in this context, I think it's super interesting to not only to especially turn the view around from inside the city to areas outside the city, because I think the development trajectory that we project on rural sites is very much still probably informed by an industrial sort of legacy, where we feel like everybody has to move to the city because this is where we meet each other, this is where the work is, this is where the relevance happens. And now, I think with digital technologies, amongst others, new futures might be lying in the countryside, where people get an interest from moving out of the city because they're too stressed, too crowded, too expensive, too fast, too polluted. So we also know that the urbanization movement doesn't only bring benefits and simple access to a better life, which was once probably part of the promise of the city, but that it also has a lot of downsides. Tiantisn is the founding principle of DNA Design and Architecture. So it's her office, it's called Design and Architecture. I'm doing this in a sort of sloppy way, sorry. Of course, I find that you studied in architecture in China and Harvard.
Yes, at Tsinghua University in Beijing.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Harvard GSD.
Exactly. Also, you've been receiving a really big amount of awards and prizes.
Not enough.
Okay. And in the past years, you've extensively worked with the rural condition in a place called Songyang.
Songyang County.
Songyang County.
That's correct.
Okay. And we will see some of the examples today. Yes. I would also like to mention that this evening conversation is basically an opportunity that arose from a conversation between Hans-Jürgen Kommerell from AEDIS and myself. And Hans-Jürgen and Christine Feireis are here in the first rows. We're very happy that you are here. They are hosting an exhibition of Tiantisn's work in the AEDIS in Pfefferberg. And you're very welcome to visit this exhibition. And if you can't wait to go there, you can even get the catalog and buy it here immediately and take it home. There's 2 catalogs that are available right here and maybe after the lecture. So I would like to give the floor to you now.
Thank you.
Welcome to Tiantisn.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you all today for this opportunity for me to come back to Berlin again after March. We had the ADA's opening in March, Rural Moves Songyang Story, and it's still ongoing exhibition, so welcome to visit ADA's show anytime. Yeah, we're going to share this Songyang story tonight. But before that, what do we talk about when we talk about China? For many of you, the impression of modern China comes with the metropolitan cities, the vast and fast urban development in the city, in the city region. But in the meantime, we still have a big number of population and many places, smaller places called like Songyang in China. So today, let's share the story of Songyang. Songyang is located in Zhejiang province in southwest of Hangzhou city. It takes 3 hours and a half to drive from Hangzhou city into the mountain area, or longer, 5 to 6 hours to drive from Shanghai city. This is Songyang next to in the province, but this is Hangzhou area. And a county like this has a population of 240,000, with 50,000 in the county's urban center, and then the rest of the 190,000 are spread in the over 400 villages in the mountain or in the flatland. As we discussed in the afternoon, that this is going to be a tourism promotion as well. You can see that this is a place with really beautiful scenic view and landscape. This is a tea plantation, and we have ancient villages in a mountain area. In total, there are over 400 villages in this region. And there's still very active rural agricultural lifestyle going on in this region. However, there are still critical issues under these utopian images, like any other rural regions in China. As young people move to the city for employment, the villages become hollow with only the elder populations left. So most rural villages are in economical decline and losing faith in its future. It actually took years of a collaboration for us with the local government and the local community to eventually develop into a systematic and sustainable strategy. So if you look at this map, these are the, I think around now we are working, in total we have about 20 projects in this region. But we see all these projects as one project, all these buildings becoming one project for this rural revitalization process in Songyang, and it's still ongoing. In the beginning, we started with this minimal intervention. This means minimal yet the most effective impact. Even since the very beginning, we work with total respect to the rural nature, the landscape, and local culture and history. So our very first project was this bamboo pavilion in the tea plantation. This was the very, I think was in the year 2000, summer of year 2014, we started with the design of this, the first open public space in the tea plantation. It's for tourists, but also for the farmers to rest and for visitors, for the villagers to have open leisure space in the tea plantation. So for this project, we took the bamboo structure, local bamboo structure, as a sustainable material, local vernacular building format. So this is a series of pavilion that's creating a dialogue between this tea plantation and then the village in the mountain. We work with this. This is our construction contractor. He got this commission. This was his first construction commission after he moved back to Songyang County from Hangzhou. And he worked with his family members. And this is his father-in-law. He's the bamboo expert in local, and he's the, how do you say, CTO for his construction company. So the whole team was made up of his family members, his cousins. Even during the construction, we have a lot of visitors from the villages around. They walk their dogs and they bring their children. And then eventually this became a very popular open terrace in the tea plantation in this natural field. It's a lot of events. So this tourism committee for this tea plantation decided to build a real tea house in the center of the tea plantation next to a small pond. This was the you could actually see there's an existing long pavilion along the next to the tea house, and we have the 5 phoenix trees on the site. So the building is actually composed as a hidden gesture behind these trees along the water. The whole setting of this tea house building is to organize to as hiding back from the trees, but open to the landscape, to the view, and to the light, to the nature. So we want to invite the light and shadow, the trees coming into our space. This was very fast project. From the day we visited the site on December 28th of 2014, and then the whole construction finished by August 20th, 2015. So in total 8 months, including we had the 1 month of Chinese New Year. When the tea house opened up in October, it soon became a, how do you say, business success in this region because many people visited this area. Here, on these photos, I didn't show the, I wanted to give the atmosphere, but if you come to the place, this was in the very beginning. But if you visit now, there are so many people in this tea house. And our operator, we have a young lady, Xiao Xue, around 30 years old. She returned hometown and started to operate this tea house building. And she also invented new programs like tea cultural program, and to attract young people from Hangzhou or from Shanghai, from other cities to visit Songyang, visit this place for like a week long, and then they could take tourism programs together with the tea educational program in this area. I wanted to introduce these 2 spaces with the courtyard opening to the tree, and also courtyard opening to the landscape, to the water. This is the space we have. we wanted to utilize the reflection of sun in the water in the afternoon. So it creates this double casting on this in this meditation room. So you could see this phenomena in this meditation room in the afternoon when you have a good sunlight. Okay, this doesn't work. And we also planted a small installation across the water under the other two trees to replace some of the stone slates into mirrors. This became also a fun space for the visitors, for young children to invent games over these mirror pieces. Next is this Tiantisn Village Center. This is the first, our first involvement with the local traditional village. Tiantisn is the one of the 100 over 100 ancient villages in Songyang County, and we were working with this cluster of buildings. You can see that this is the cluster of buildings by the entrance of the village, right next to the ancestors' hall. But this cluster of buildings were not in a very good condition. You could tell from these pictures they belonged to the first generation of villagers who moved here and settled down. But the houses were in very poor conditions. And these are the two houses belong to two brothers. With a dead end, two identical houses, mirrored houses with the a dead end alley in the center. There was already discussion within the community with the government whether they should just take down these buildings because they were abandoned, they were not in use, and they were there were crisis, like how do you say, the safety crisis issues in these buildings. So most of people would propose to take these buildings down, but then we proposed to preserve these buildings and also to preserve the envelope of these buildings, but then to reorganize the interior space. Because the traditional villages, they're not about any individual very significant building qualities, like they have the fancy crafts as you see in those mansions. These are all houses belong to the farmers. But then the overall envelope, the profile of these, the cluster of these farmer houses, they are the most important feature of a traditional village. So it's not about being poor or rich. Altogether, they become this. How do you say that, the feature of this traditional village. And it tells the history of how the generations start to establish on this land and build up a village with hundreds of years of history. So yes, this is the construction process that we propose to as to reorganize the interior space, to join the two brothers' houses together, and they become one house. Some of the old rotten wooden structure were replaced, and we also add in a new roof insulation. What's important here is this: we also introduce this language of the skylights to bring in the to create a more pleasant space, interior space. Again, we also work with these young people in the village. This is the Xiao Jiang Binlong. He was a state patrol officer, and he also, after this Pingtian villager center, he also started a homestay business in the village. He collects a dozen of old buildings and convert them into homestay, or we call bed and breakfast business in his home village. And then this is the head of the village, Xiao Lan, who's just graduated from a college, university in Beijing with computer science major. And also Mr. Wang was the mayor at that time who initiated all these rural vitalization projects and process in Songyang County, and it's still ongoing now. And our team were really working on site. At some point we also became the construction workers. But this is the picture when I met the contractor, Mr. Wu. He was, the first day we met, he was very unpleasant. He was so pissed at working on such a piece of a project because he didn't think this cluster of buildings were worth preserving. He was the one to propose to tear these buildings down. The video shows how they replaced the rotten tension MOT's wooden structure, tenant MOT's wooden structure in the on-site. Actually, from very beginning when we worked with the bamboo pavilion, and then later on this Pingtian village, and later on the other new projects, we always work with the local construction method. This is a kind of a familiar way for local workers, local villagers to engage with the construction process, and the result will become something familiar to them as well. Construction process. Okay, so eventually this building, this Pingtian Village Center, become a welcoming space for both visitors and the local villager. And this is the Mr. Wu. He became the master on local constructions, and he was also giving lectures on site. I think he's finally happy now. Last summer we had when we say the homestay business, it was quite a success in the Pingtian village. And then last summer we had 2 young people moving back from Hangzhou city, and they opened up this dyeing workshop in the village using the natural plants as ingredient. So they created this dyeing business for the fabric dyeing business in this region, and they chose to take this space in the mountain. This is also a program for the tourism program for the homestay business. But at the meantime, these young people, they're setting up their e-commerce business, e-commerce startup. So they sell their products online. This brings new opportunities for this ancient village. So even with this bamboo pavilion with the Pintian project, during the process, we started to think about, to discuss with the local government, with the Songyang County, and eventually we come up with this architectural acupuncture strategy to look at individual villages on their unique tradition, crafts, or heritage, and maybe to introduce a public program, public space, either a renovation project or new buildings, depends on different conditions. But this program or this new space will become the acupuncture strategy to activate the vitalization in its own village. Then we have some new projects under planning. This is a brown sugar factory in Xing village. This is the Xing village in a flatland. This is different from the traditional village in the mountain area that you could, most of the buildings are still preserved as ram earth wall buildings. So here you have people building up like modern houses, 3 to 4 stories of modern houses, but still on this flatland village, and there's still active population and agricultural activities going on. In this village, they had the most famous product is their brown sugar. There were many family workshops in the village. These were the original thing, how they produce the brown sugar. So in this village, in this context, we propose to set up a villager union and then to build a brown sugar factories away from the village, because you could tell from this condition it generates the fire risks in the village. So this is the new building with the new factory, and villagers, these cooking masters, they are working all together. And the whole space is composed as a central stage with open for size, opening up for the visitors, and because we think this is a striking live performance with workers, with the villagers cooking in a traditional way. This is not a modern factory with machines. Here you could really see how they cook the brown sugar back to hundreds of years ago. And the movement, we also we bought this uniform for the workers on Taobao, online. These were very cheap uniforms, but it gives them this outlook of how do you say this, as an actor on the stage. And also the lighting, because the cooking season lasts for 3 months in a year, and it goes 24 hours a day. So even the lighting design is to help to set up the space as a central stage. After 2 years, these cooking masters, they were quite proud. They become the celebrity in the village because they are always photographed or interviewed by visitors. From this picture, you could tell the connection or relationship, dialogue between our factory with the village, with these buildings, modern buildings on the site. In fact, when we say the acupuncture, it's not only about the small scale of program or building injection into each village. It's also coming with limited budget, construction budget. In that sense, the government will sponsor, or they will provide 70–80% of the construction budget, and then the rest of the money has to be raised by the village, either from the collective money, villager money, or from certain like individual investors, private investors. But this is a strategy, social strategy, really to engage the village and the local community, to engage from very beginning. They will be proud of this is their own project from very beginning. And the factory also provides other space, like leisure space for visitors, also for the villagers as well, and then other public functions for the village. The construction cost for this building is €200 per square meter, €300 per square meter, in fact. How much would it be in Germany? 3,000? 1,000 for the steel structure. So the cooking process is only 3 months in a year, but then for the rest of the time, this space could function as a public space for their movie nights, for square dance. If you know the Chinese square dance culture, it's everywhere. It's in the cities, and it's also in the villages. So this is functioning as the village social space as well. And also in the past 2 years, this factory has been functioning for 2 years. The sugar price has already increased from 8 RMB to 25 RMB half kilo, and already over 3 times. And this also attracts a lot of visitors from not only tourists, but visitors from other villages to come over and then to see when they have the cooking ceremony and other events. So this becomes a local, local tradition or local culture, and continued after years. Next is the Hakka indenture village. We're working together on these, both of the sugar factory and Hakka indenture museum at the same time. This is a different village in the Hakka region that's in the mountain area as well. Hakka, we call it guest family. Hakka is 客家, that means the guest family. You could see the 土楼. That's Hakka building. But then they moved to other regions, and then as the guest family, they signed everything. They put everything on paper as contracts, as indenture. So there's this collection by elementary school teacher in the village of Hakka indenture. This becomes one of the most important Hakka indenture collections in China. So yes, the program of in this village will be a museum of Hakka. But at the meantime, when we say indenture, or when we say this culture of contracts, this was actually the foundation of Hakka society as well. So in this building, in this project, I'm just going to go fast with this. We proposed a stone construction because the village name Shicang means stone cave. So you could tell that there's a lot of resource of stone in this region. Originally, a lot of buildings and the bridges were made of stone. And the stone construction also gives a local, a familiar material or sense of feeling to connect the village and It stands almost as a retaining wall to the mountain. So the building has a part of its open courtyards to connect with the village, and eventually to guide into the interior space with the creek on the side. But with this type of construction, it also creates this archaeological space that when you enter the building, you feel like you step into the past with this void and volume, with the interplay of light and shadow, dark and light. We also have this, with the creek, we have this opening on the roof to collect rainwater. And by noon, we have the mist coming out, following the sunlight. It creates this rainbow effect in interior effect. This was taken in October, but if we come in the summertime, we will have a more rainbow in the space. Okay, so next is the Shimen Bridge. Later on, we work with the different. These are the two villages on the flat land across the river, Shimen Bridge and Shimenyu Bridge. There was an abandoned bridge built in 1974, but was not in use for many years. Again, this was under discussion of whether to take it down, demolish it, or not, because it's not sustainable for the vehicle anymore. So we proposed that maybe we could take this bridge and add in a wooden lounge to create a pedestrian village, pedestrian bridge as well. So the wooden lounge would become an add-on attachment to the existing bridge construction. It's a simple form growing out of this bridge structure, with openness or covered with the roof. And it's only for the pedestrian or these mobile small vehicles. When we had this bridge open after this, just right before the Chinese New Year, we had, in about a week, we had around 80,000 visitors coming to this bridge. And it's also a popular area in popular public space for villages across the water. The two villages named Shimen Village and Shimenyu Village. Yu means the farmland. These two villages were originally one village in the ancient time. When people from the Shimen village, they crossed the water, crossed the river to their farmland, and eventually build up their new houses across the river. And so eventually this Shimenyu becomes an independent village. So on one hand, this is a bridge as a metaphor to connect these two villages back together again. Just not too far away from this bridge, we have another village called Wang Village. This was from this picture, you couldn't tell where the village is because it's totally surrounded by industry, by factories with chimneys around it. This is the part of the old village that's embedded and was in very poor conditions when we first visited around 2 years ago. And then the street is full of trucks just right next to the village. For this village, it was, in the beginning, it was hard to find the program, to set up the program as an acupuncture, because it didn't have the kind of the scenic landscape or views like the other villages in the mountain area or next to the river. But then when we talk with the villagers about their tradition, about their heritage, and they talk about their ancestor Wang Jing, you could tell this pride, the sense of pride from the villagers. Wang Jing is how do you say that, emperor's scholar from Ming Dynasty. And he's one of the 3 most important historical figures in the whole Songyang County. He's the chief editor for this, the great encyclopedia of the Yongle regime back in the Ming Dynasty. So yes, he's the pride of this village. So for us, it soon became this decision of building up this Wang Jing Memorial Hall, the Ancestors Memorial Hall, in the center of the village, right next to their Wang's Ancestors Hall here. This is the new building program here. The critical issue for this village is to restore the pride and honor of the village back to its ancient time. So the building we could tell from this aerial view, the building is fitting with the village fabric and with rammed earth wall as the enclosure form. This is the very traditional and very common building material and construction method everywhere. But then the interior, this is the village view. It's the volume to having a dialogue, create spaces with its neighbors. But then the interior, we create this the scene of Wang Jing's life. We took, let's say Wang Jing has a Facebook, and then we took his timeline to set up the 17 key moments, and to map these key moments with the building structural corners, and then enlarge these concrete structural corners into memorial corners. So you would have a walk-through scene of Wang Jing's life. From the entrance, it takes you to the different moments of his life. So it creates almost like a temple in the village for villagers to as a memorial hall for their ancestor. So this is the building that engages the exhibition together with the building, with the architecture. But then we free up the space for any other events like in the village. During the Chinese New Year, they had a dinner event here with 15 tables. Each table has 10 people, so 150 people in this in the whole space. And in this building, we also work with the local stone carving technique. Through all these buildings, through all these projects, we wanted to say that architecture could be a language, a media to tell about the history, the tradition, or the very special, unique local life of each individual villages. But at the meantime, architecture could become a powerful engine to trigger or to vitalize, to motivate the engagement of local villagers, local community. And let's say in this Wanjing village, after this memorial hall opened in before the Chinese New Year, and now the villagers already repair the roads in the village, and also repair all the other ancestor halls and other the broken or traditional buildings in the village. So it starts to build up a new atmosphere and optimistic atmosphere in the village. And this is happening in all these different villages with the other projects too. Next is this very light structure we did in the Hengkeng village, and also a traditional village in the mountain with this beautiful bamboo forest. And this is maybe the smallest or and with the lowest budget we have ever worked with. This is just very easy to utilize the character of this type of bamboo in the mountain, because they are very strong underground as a system, as a root system, but then it was very easy for the villagers to weave them, like you could weave them instead of to construct, to build into an open space in the nature. And also this is a Pine Park Pavilion in the park forest, but it becomes a joining point for the Songying River, the scenic area, and also the village behind it. So this building, we wanted to use this building as an installation to introduce the pine resin industry in the village, but also carries out this leisure program for this Songying River scenic view area. So you could see that building is working with sections integrating the pine trees, also to accommodate some function and program. But then we have the images of pine resin collecting process on the glass as an installation. So we have been working with many different villages in the Songyang region. But during the process, we are very clear that we're not just working with individual buildings or individual villages. The acupuncture is not just to for the spot, it's to activate the circulation among different spots, right? So the acupuncture also it's bringing out the character of individual villages, but also to create a interaction in between all these villages. Let's say that the villager from this village can come to the Xing village to buy their brown sugar, and then they might come over for our cultural events. So these become the interaction, cultural, economical exchange among the villagers. But at the same time, this to working with the rural region is not to isolate rural or making the rural as a counterparts of the urban situation. Instead, this is the strategy is to try to increase the interaction also between the village and between the rural region and the urban. So besides all these villager projects, we started to look at the key points between the rural and urban. For example, this is the Dushan Leisure Center. It's right at the foot of the Dushan Mountain, the gateway to the Songyang County. So this will be the first meeting point for visitors to Songyang County and the local people. But it's also you could tell this is the urban center right behind the mountain. So this is also a water leisure space for the local people too. A meeting point for people from urban center or from the villages as well. A wooden spiral structure along the water. Does it work? Again, this is the spiral building integrating with the landscape design too, to accommodate some different program. Let's say the water leisure center, the visitor center, water sports training for athletes as well. So we have a variety of program on this into this project. This building is still rushing for the final touch, the final finishing. But yeah, we barely made it made this film for the Venice. And next project, this is the project that's still under construction, but we're also looking into the infrastructure facilities that are located in the outskirts of the urban center. Some of them are next to the villages. This is not a building of entirely new program, but rather to take the water conservancy, the local infrastructure managing facilities with some articulation of the building surface and then the water park to make this into a living, an open space or an open public program for the urban residents and also for the villagers in this region. So you could tell from this that circular programs are all the open public program, and the rest would be the managing facilities. This is the first example that we use for we try to use this conservancy program or infrastructural program to see if this can provide more possibilities for the local urban and rural residents. That's it. That's the end for today. Thank you very much.
this presentation. There's one.
Yeah, thank you very much for the wonderful lecture and the wonderful work. I would like to know a little bit more about the process, because these projects are like one entity where the site, the program, the design, and the use that people take over it are like very related to each other, like the bamboo forest, for example, is just a site, and it looks as though you have conceived almost all of it from the beginning, or is it actually an initiative which is coming from the government, and you have a discussion with them, and then you look at specific sites? How does that work?
Yeah, now we work very closely with the local government and local community from very beginning of investigating and deciding what program to be introduced into this village. Like I said in the interview earlier, that we work like a doctor to diagnose before we give out the treatments. And yeah, so this is I know that conventionally we work as an architect. We take the given commissions to the office, right? But this is, as I said, we've been working with the local for almost 5 years. And in the very beginning with the Bamboo Theater, we were working as an advisor. Or even before that, we were working as advisors. So this is how we establish this long-term collaboration. And I think, on the other hand, to be able to work in this region for years and practice for years, it built up this, not only the trust, but also for us as an architect, we really know the place and the people. It's like your own family. So you have a better or deeper understanding of the local culture and tradition. So then you can act, how do you say, like a doctor, or from the beginning of the project. And so yes, all these different, as I said, acupuncture, it also means there would be different scale of building, or how do you say, a program to introduce to different locations. While you were asking questions, do you mind I just show these videos?
I think it's also interesting to mention that in the government you had people, or she had people, who had about the knowledge about architecture. Not all of the people you have collaborated with loved the idea you proposed. Bringing something, contemporary architecture, the sugar factory was not at all fitting in their imagination of to get a new, say, building in their village. And it took a long time to convince the people, not just saying in way of talking and you get it, but the architect in that position has a really important task as a moderator or mediator. There is a strategy which is a more holistic one, which means for the entire region and the government, and the dialogue between Tiantisn and the government was, okay, we develop something together, and step by step, like an acupuncture, you give a pin and make a little peak, and then the environment becomes better. And this is really important, that you have a partner in this context who understands what architecture can do. Because there are other examples within China where also they considered, oh, let's make it nice and beautiful, but it turned to a negative with a result, and it became a kind of Disneyfication of the idea what rural China could be, which ended in a kind of segregation of the original people living in these villages, and they have no benefit from this kind of development. So here was a very, very careful dialogue, and I think it's really important to mention that the government, or people within the government, was really pushing the project because they had an understanding what architecture could serve for.
There was another question very much in the back.
Yeah, maybe I directly
not on the screen.
Connect with the question. I mean, the difference to other projects of rural reconstruction, rural revitalization is that we can identify a sort of regional strategy. Like you try to open up opportunities for local villagers, encounters for locals, and also urbanites. And you, you try to link villages with each other, and you try to create local economies in a sense. And to what degree, I mean, this is a question, to what degree also other regions become aware of this regional approach, like going beyond just making villages more beautiful in a really one-dimensional way, and maybe also approaching these more regional linkages in other regions. What do you think? To what degree other regions become aware of this?
I think the Chinese rural strategy has been going on for decades, and it used to be something like a how do you say, beautifying the village, the countryside. So in many places it worked as a makeover of the whole village to renovate every buildings in a village. And this actually, it caused a lot of problems, and it's always making one individual village into a model example with tons of investments coming to here. But this is not a sustainable way. So there's, in Songyang, in this regional practice, eventually, during the process, we also went to the other examples, but then eventually we come up with this acupuncture with limited money, but to motivate local to engage from the beginning. And this become now a system that is working. It could apply to many other villages as well, and also to apply to other regions. This is not only limited in the Songyang County. It could stretch out to whole China, or that's even to Europe. Each project doesn't cost that much, and we had in Pingtian village, it was 1 million RMB, so around 150,000 euro to renovate. This also makes it this is what we said. It's not only to make a makeover example, model example, but it's ongoing. It's a process that this could also develop into the future. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, it's going in this direction. I was just wondering how, to what degree also the government becomes really aware of the opportunity of approaching more regional development, like you did in Songyang, because in
other counties, right? Yeah. They are coming to visit Songyang for the practice, and I think there are also other how do you say this practice in the neighbor counties and in other regions, especially in the Zhejiang province. It seems to become more effective in this region, but I think the rural region in China, in different provinces, they might have slightly different situation. Let's say in the southwest China, it would be a different case, because in Zhejiang province, you still, or in most of these rural region, we have the infrastructure, we have the road coming in, right, and then they also have the internet facility. So these are the very important infrastructure for this region. This also become very important elements to attract young people to move back from the city.
Yeah, maybe this can be underlined that, I mean, while we in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern still miss the connection to the internet, we have seen in this Pintian village, the Chinese telecom is providing broadband. Yeah?
Right,
And,
yeah.
Even if the condition looks poor still, or I mean very rural, the people who are selling the products, you can already pay with your smartphone.
Yes.
I mean, it looks really a kind of
With
anachronistic
WeChat.
condition, yeah? But this makes young people thinking, okay, if I have access, I can start also business. And this is what this...
The dyeing fabric workshop,
and,
yeah.
And I think it's really also important that the government decided, okay, if we want to upgrade the rural region and prevent all the people going into the cities, we have to provide connectivity in all dimensions. So there's high-speed train coming in the hinterland, there's a regional airport under construction, and the internet is already there. So it's really, and the one village produces whatever, the rice wine, and the others become aware, okay, then we redesign our bottles.
Yeah,
we are known
exactly.
For their little bottles. And overall, the sugar, the wine, the rice wine, the bottles, they created a kind of common selling with a format.
It's becoming a regional economical circulation among these villages.
Yeah, I think this is really important to promote beside the architecture.
Right.
Here's a question.
I was wondering how much contact you have to other architects in the region and how many are maybe connecting to your projects so that it's also an incentive for young architects to move back to the village. I mean, let's say to move back to the village, but to connect better to projects.
We are not the only architects working in this region. There are also many other architects here, and then there are young architects originally from Songyang County. They were working in the Hangzhou city, and now they moved back to another village in the mountain, Xiken. They built their they renovated the old houses and turned it into a homestay business. And it was quite successful. They had more income than being an architect in Hangzhou. So they decided to build more in the region. So this eventually became a alternative for architects as well. You can build your own property in the region and then with your own business. Yeah, so this is definitely a new opportunity, possibilities for young architects.
I would be curious, now as we learned a lot about the context and the conditions in rural China where the individual projects are placed, what strikes from all the images and movies immediately is a very strong sense of atmosphere and aesthetics that somehow also connects the different projects.
No, we don't need this one.
I'm not really sure if I can ask this question, but would you like to share some thoughts on this? Like, how do you design something like that beyond the program? No, you were talking about how to find a program and how to negotiate with the local environment in a way, and to find it, and then to implement it, and what the effects are. But
yeah, I do want to talk about this. I think it comes with it was totally a long learning process for us to work in Songyang. And you could tell that the bamboo pavilion was the very first realized project. There was try to create a dialogue of or a metaphor to this the village in the mountain. And when I look back now, I think this was really a approach from how do you say, an outsider. And you could almost design everything with the concept of a village in the mountain, right? Even with this project too. But then I think Pintian project was the first village project in the mountain, working with Mr. Wu, who was very pissed off at me in the beginning, and working with the local construction, local building method, local community very closely. As I said, we were all, at some point we were all construction workers on site. That was a very tough process. I think it goes back to the previous question, one of the questions asking about if this is how was the communication. Yeah, that was very difficult communication because now I realize I didn't know anything about the local construction. To them, I had this title of architect, but they were all laughing at me. But yeah, it took there was a 6 months of construction for this building, and there was a very intense 6 months of learning and training on site. And then eventually we had this, we understood more of how they build. And I think this is very important into the projects, into every project. I think if I would like to say that if you challenge them too much on the construction method or something they're unfamiliar with, you would think as an architect you would think it's innovative, but then you would receive a lot of resistance. And yes, actually, a lot of times this kind of innovation seemed very silly for the local people because the construction method has been established for hundreds of years. So this was also, we decided this would be a strategy to work with the locals, to work with the construction method they're very familiar with. Even with the Hakka stone building, there was we didn't design the structure, the construction and drawings. It was really by their own traditional way, but of course to follow the Chinese regulation. We only add in the cement to replace a portion of cement to replace the ram earth to pass the building code, building regulation. So yes, in each project, we find that you could see that it's always a different material or building method in different projects or villages. It always followed trace back to the original or to the context, to their heritage. But on the other hand, I think the building method will affect your design, the space, or how do you say? You want to articulate a certain type of space or a sense of space, a sense of atmosphere. You would really work with a certain type of a construction method. Is that clear for you? Like I think it defines, right? When a stone construction, even with the same, totally the same format, if you replace with a concrete building, it would be a different atmosphere. It totally changed. So I think in this region, in this type of project, the material, the construction, it really defines a lot. But then it depends, like that has, I think the program has a lot of effect on the design as well, like in the memorial hall. When you want to create something from the outside looks humble, just a humble building in an old village, but then from the inside you want to flip it over to make it a surprise for people to enter the building. So yes, in this way, it would you have to work with the content of the building, a memorial hall, the life story of ancestor, to compose into architecture. So when we talk about architecture, it's not only about the material or how do you say, the details, the construction. It also integrates the content, the spirit from each village. And I think that this is very important because you could take architecture as a literature as well, as a performance as well. You could really, you develop your, I think it expands the definition of architecture. Yeah.
Is there one last question, maybe? If not, I would like to say, Yeah, thank you very much again.
Thank you so much.